It is my first task to welcome you to this event. So welcome, everyone. We have a great turnout. I know we'll have more people coming in, but I want to make sure we get full time for all of the things that we have to cover today. First of all, my name is Carrie Schumacher. For those I haven't met, I'm the Vice Chancellor for Information Technology and Chief Strategy Officer at UM-Dearborn. And with both sides of that hat, both hats, I'm interested in this topic. So I'm really excited to be here. This is an important discussion. I think all of you fully understand that. AI is hugely consequential technology. And get ready because we have a great event for you today lined up with experts from Ann Arbor and from our own faculty as well. So part of my role here is to introduce Gabriela Scarlatta, who all of you know is our interim chancellor and also professor of French. You may not know that she has been most anxious to get this. You may not know that she has been most anxious to have this conversation and really to have some weighty discussions where faculty members are sharing with each other and considering some of their concerns and some of their excitement about AI. She truly has the lens of a faculty member since she's been teaching her students last semester or this semester, and really grappling in her own classroom with how AI is being potentially used and how it might be used in the future. I also want to note that we'll be continuing the work on AI here on this campus, and with Gabriela's support and encouragement, creating a consulting service for folks to get assistance with AI probably toward the fall. So stay tuned for more things going on. And I just want to say with that, please join me in welcoming Gabriela to the podium.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you and welcome to all of you for being here today for this important conversation. I am so glad you joined us. We have been hearing a lot from faculty about how some of us are struggling with AI, the uncertainty about the use of AI in our classroom and beyond. There are questions about policy, use, implementations, ethics, and more. And of course, there are a lot of questions from our students who are kind of confused because some of us tell them, go ahead and use it. Some of us are like, no, this is how you use it. There's restrictions and etc. So with that in mind, we wanted to make sure that we had this important conversation. And I want to assure you that UM's leaderships, the deans, the chairs, and us, understand these concerns and are working to support you with resources and conversations like this one today. As Carrie said, there will be more to follow. And so I encourage us all to have more of these conversations. It should maybe be at the discipline level. It should be at the department level with lunches, with discussions, just organic get-together. Hey, how are you doing? How are you dealing with that in your class? How are you dealing with that with your students? So that the discipline sort of like drives the conversation rather than something outside, right? I think that is important. As Carrie says, I am teaching this class, and of course, I can see the difference. But I'm lucky because I teach in French, my students speak French, and when they turn in homework and their French is better than mine, something is up. So now they know they've been warned, so they know, right, that I can detect right away. So I know I have that advantage, and some of you do not. That is why I really wanted to invite Dr. Tazeen Daniels to come here today and get us going. I read about her work on this topic and thought that is exactly what our campus needs, somebody to just set us straight on this conversation. I was particularly intrigued that she is taking a broad perspective that includes the liberal arts and the humanities, which I think will be integral in the development and the future of AI. AI needs humans, right? And here, in the humanities, the liberal arts bring that aspect. Thank you to Dr. Daniels for joining us today. Thank you to all of our faculty members who will be on the panels and who have been leaders in this issue. And thanks to Stein for moderating the panels, and to Carrie Schumacher and the Provost Office for partnering on this important initiative, and thanks to Ravi Pensky, a professor of engineering and vice president for information technology and CIO on the Ann Arbor campus, who has also agreed to find some time to come here and be here for this discussion. I also want to acknowledge the Hub for Teaching and Learning. I did see Carla. Where is she? Carla, thank you so much to you, and thank you, Autumn, for this important work, because you have so many offerings. You've created these communities. I know Sophia is here for foreign languages, and she brings a lot. She makes this connection. We need the faculty who make connections between the hub and the discipline. So thank you for letting us allowing us and helping us in navigating this AI landscape. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Daniels. First of all, she's a faculty member. She is nationally recognized as an expert in inclusive teaching and instructional technology. So her framework for generative AI is built with faculty in mind. Dr. Daniels serves as an associate director at the University of Michigan Center for Research on Learning and Teaching, and she is the founder of the Pedagogist LLC, where she offers her skills as an educational developer, consultant, and coach. Named one of EdTech Magazine's top higher ed IT influencers to follow, Dr. Daniels is a leading voice on the ethical and equitable use of generative AI. She contributes to national conversations on AI and pedagogy, including writing the forewords to Teaching and Generative AI, Pedagogical Possibilities and Productive Tensions, and Transforming Teaching with Generative AI. Now, I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Tassin Daniels to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the warm welcome to Dearborn. Thank you to the weather gods for making it such a pleasant drive. I got here in 52 minutes, so that was amazing. And I'm so delighted to be able to share some of my recent thinking around generative AI. I have had the honor of being a faculty mentor through the AAC&U Institute for Generative AI Pedagogy and the Curriculum, where I've had the opportunity to work with and mentor universities across the country. So I'm coming with you from some insights as my own work as an educational developer at the Ann Arbor campus, but also hearing stories and sitting in rooms with folks all the way from university presidents to undergraduates who are just starting out their educational trajectory. And I have tried to do my best to try to capture those stories and distill down what I see as some of the most common challenges and roadblocks to this issue, and put it into a package that I hope will help you in your own reflections around this work. So one thing about me is I don't like to just, I do like to talk, but I also like to listen. So before we get started in the talk, I think it's helpful to just get a little bit of temperature in the room. So if you would pull out your mobile devices or your laptops, and I would love for you to answer this question. This is going to turn into a word cloud, so I just want one single word that best captures how you are currently feeling about generative AI in teaching today. That's probably better if I make it bigger. So what single word best captures how you're currently feeling about generative AI in teaching today? So as you're doing that, I will just share just a quick sidebar, which is I'm using a program called Poll Everywhere, which is free to use for educators. I don't know if it's supported in your particular department or campus, but you can use it, and it's a really great way to just add some engagement. And so in the top corner, you might see like a little checkbox with the number increasing, so that tells me how many respondents there are. So I'll wait till we get to, I was gonna say 30, and then I will go ahead and show the results of this. So before I do, this is gonna generate a word cloud. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of a word cloud or used a word cloud before. Okay, I feel like most people have. But for those who haven't, or just raised your hand because everyone else raised their hand, it's basically like a very light level coding of the frequency of words that come up. So if a word comes up more often, it will aggregate and make the word bigger on the screen. And if it's not as often, it will be smaller. The color doesn't matter and the position doesn't matter. I think they just try to make it look pretty. So let's take a look what these 36 folks are feeling about AI. All right. So it's actually been interesting. I think maybe, Ravi, you and I can talk about how many of these I've collected over the last 4 years, and maybe we write a paper about that. But the biggest word, obviously, that I see in the middle, hopeful, curious, optimistic, interested, empowering, intrigued. I also see a lot of other words, maybe not the same word, but there are a lot of words to say freaked out, right? Nervous, daunted, scared, challenged, reluctant, slow, overwhelmed, frightening, confusing, uncertain, chaotic. Yeah, so you can imagine if all of those were collapsed, that would make a pretty big section of this cloud as well. So the reason I start with this is to normalize the range of emotions that probably come up when we talk about generative AI. I know that for some of us, and for some days for me too, it's frustrating. It's like, are we still talking about our feelings? But actually, that's what makes us the most human. And you wouldn't feel these things if you did not care deeply about teaching and your students. So I just want to acknowledge that your feelings are valid. My goal is not to like help you feel better, but maybe to help you feel more clarity and empowered. I think that's more of what my goal is. And also to recognize that the people in the space with you, your students, the people in your department also have a smattering of these emotions, okay? And it's because they care, not because they're just ignorant and or oversensitive, right? I think sometimes we tend to put people in those categories. So with this in mind, I also want to invite you that this word can change from day to day, minute to minute, hour to hour. Throughout this presentation, you might feel different things. So just kind of keep track of that as part of our experience today. Okay. So here is what I'm hoping to accomplish in our 60 minutes together. I want to tell you a little bit about who I am. Gabriella did a wonderful job with my introduction, but I think there's more to like who I am, how I think, why I think the way I do, and why maybe you could trust me. I don't know, it's up to you, but I think that's important. Number 2 is to talk through some of the challenges that I have witnessed and myself experienced around engaging with generative AI. I want to introduce a framework that I developed actually not that long ago that I presented for the AAC&U at their plenary that got a surprisingly positive approach from people who are on all ends of the spectrum. And so I want to share that to see if this is something that could work for you and your thinking. And then, of course, I want to offer some advice for best practices for critically engaging at every stage, because at the end of the day, I know that's what faculty wants. What I want to is like, tell me what to do. So I'm going to try to give you some concrete advice along the way. Does that sound good? This is where in Zoom you'd give me like a thumbs up or like a heart. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's start with who I am. So the first thing you need to know about me is I am not a technologist, okay? I am an anthropologist. In fact, I'm a medical anthropologist who studied science and technology as her discipline. I'm a humanist. I love stories. I see technology not just as a shiny object, but I see it as a reflection of our own values and our own goals as a society. And so when I do my work as an educational developer, that's where I root myself. The second thing you should know is that my dissertation work is actually a very interesting parallel to what's happening right now. I looked at the use of prescription stimulants among college students as a performance enhancer. So some of you might know something about that phenomenon. But essentially, students who have access to prescription drugs to treat conditions like attention deficit disorder, those are stimulants, they would take them with or without a prescription and or distribute them to their friends and colleagues with or without a prescription with the intention of performing better on exams and other types of academic work. Through doing that work, I really got to get a very clear look at what is it like to be a student at an American institution today, the types of academic pressures that they face, the types of freedom and responsibility they're trying to navigate, and also what it's like to be seen as inherently lazy, a cheater, trying to play the system, irresponsible, medically negligent, and all the stigmas that come with that kind of behavior. Can you all see some of the parallels maybe in the work that we're doing with generative AI? So I think that's important to know. I'm making those connections as well. I also do generative AI, like teaching and learning work at the Center for Research on Learning and Teaching. We don't have a designated person on paper, but if we did, it would probably be me. So me and a couple of my colleagues have really been at ground zero at the center working on it. One of the things I was privileged to do was to be on a guidance committee put together by Ravi and the provost to really provide some guidance back in 2022, 2023 on what we should be doing. So I got to sit in a room with a lot of really smart people across disciplines to really think about how is this changing fundamental questions around teaching and learning, the role of instructors and students, the purpose of a liberal arts education. And we did write a really big report, as many institutions have done since then. And we're still grappling with a lot of those issues. And so I'm delighted to be able to bring some insights from those conversations. And most recently, I have been able to engage in some of those national conversations because every time a university president or chancellor comes to me and says, oh gosh, we're struggling with this. And I said, yep, I know, we all are struggling with this. So I think that there are some systemic patterns that I'm seeing and maybe some systemic solutions that we can bring to this with context in mind. And so to that end, I think Gabrielle already mentioned it, I have been writing about this, but in particular, the forwards for these books, I think gave me an opportunity to not just root it in evidence, but really to think about those larger ethical, conceptual, really central questions to what we're doing here as educators. Okay. I don't know if you trust me yet, but it's important you know that about me, because in order for you to understand the framework, these are the premises that you would have to agree with. You don't have to, but these are where I'm starting from, okay? So, so if you have arguments against this, it makes sense why this wouldn't be as useful. But here's my first premise, is that AI is here, and it is rapidly influencing every sector of society. I'm saying radically transforming it. I'm not trying to be grandiose, but AI is popping up in every corner, whether you're at your kid's school, and they're changing the system they use to do their curriculum, or you're at the doctor's office and all of a sudden they're making eye contact with you because they're transcribing their notes via AI, or if it's a pop-up that comes up in your Zoom meeting, or it's Google Gmail that is finishing sentences for you and offering to rewrite this to be more polite because, hey, I thought it was polite, but I guess it wasn't polite. Thanks, Google. So it is coming up in all kinds of ways and also in lots of systemic ways as well. So that's my first premise, is it's here. My second is that it is both solving and creating and exacerbating new problems. It is doing both, and both things can be true. That can be hard to hold. I think that's something I've gotten good at with my training as an anthropologist and probably years of therapy, but two things can be true. And so I want to invite you to think about ways to hold that complexity. Number 3, higher education is positioned to guide ethical, productive integration and limits, okay? If we are concerned about where AI is heading, it is our responsibility to guide it in the right direction, okay? If it's a river, right, and it's going to flow, we want it to flow towards the water source, towards the plants and the gardens and the agriculture that we want to see grown, okay? How do we do that? Faculty are central to this process through modeling, right, how you are using or abstaining from AI, teaching, right, having AI be a part of your teaching and or a part of the content you're teaching about, mentorship, right, if you're working with undergrads or grad students around research, and research, right, how are you integrating it ethically and productively into your own work. So if we say higher education, I don't just mean some abstract body. I'm talking about the people and the relationships in this institution. My next premise is to make a timely impact. If we want to move the course of this river, we need everybody critically engaged in this conversation. Okay, so nobody gets to opt out. I know that's impossible, but if we really want to move a river, we need all hands on deck. And most importantly, okay, Not every faculty member needs to be an expert in generative AI, okay? But you should know enough to make informed decisions that advance student success, okay? I want you to feel empowered around AI, not conflicted, not resistant. I want you to feel empowered so that you can make whatever decisions are best for your students, and you can say with your full chest what that looks like. Okay, so these are my premises for critical engagement. Now you might say, hey, that sounds great, but like, it's still really hard to critically engage with generative AI. So what I'm gonna invite you to do, and this is gonna be a short answer, so you can use 5 words or less. Take a picture, and actually it should pop up on your phone automatically if you're still logged in. In 5 words or less, what feels like your biggest barrier to critically engaging with Gen AI right now? Hold on, let me make it bigger for you. So what is your biggest barrier to engagement? And I don't even mean adoption, I mean even just wrapping your arms around it, being in the same room with it. Or it could be adopting it and advancing it. It could be from all of those angles. Okay, we're at 20, so I'm going to go ahead and start showing the responses, but continue to add yours here. Time. You didn't even need 5 words. Speed of change. Oh my gosh, yes. Feels like I'm updating every 10 seconds. Jason, okay. Sorry, Jason. I guess send Jason to me and we'll talk to Jason. I don't know enough, just the basics, okay? So just like this imposter syndrome of not having enough expertise to engage, not having the time and conflicting priorities, absolutely. Lack of confidence, like, do I really know what I'm doing? Am I allowed to do this? Forgetting that it's there. Finding time to explore. Yeah, I mean, forgetting is there, that makes sense. So many things happening. Integrity, ethical issues. I don't have time to deal with this right now. Using the best prompts, lack of accountability. Yeah, the fear of losing my voice, absolutely. Reading so much formulaic text, yep. Time and scope. We'll do a couple more. Trust in the tools, right? So lack of trust in tools, lack of guided practice. Hallucinations, missing sources, right? I can't fully invest in it. Ethics of use. Okay. Too many AI prompt promoters that are blind to the risks and threat, right? So this idea that you're kind of screaming into the void about the dangers, but people aren't listening. Lack of understanding, the fear that it replaces thinking, and that higher ed might not be a foci. Okay, feels like, I was wondering when that would come up, feels like cheating. Okay, so I am going to lock this for now, just so I can keep moving. Data privacy, yep. So yeah, this is my challenge too, is how can I support all faculty, from the skeptics to the explorers, to make thoughtful choices about generative AI that advance student success? Because these are all legitimate concerns, okay? Now, it would be really crappy if my keynote ended there, but I do have some ideas and some thinking around this, okay? Because I've been grappling with this challenge for a long time, and as somebody who is not a technologist but works in ed tech, and specifically in teaching and learning, I thought, okay, let me go back to the theories. There are lots of theories about culture change, technology adoption, change leadership in large institutions. And while I think a lot of these had pieces of the puzzle for me, what I wanted was something that was strengths-based, right? Because a lot of these will talk about laggards or technophobes, or some people refer to themselves as dinosaurs, and to others. And I don't know, I feel like that's reducing some very complex concerns into some negative attributes that I didn't like. I also wanted something that focused in higher education and specifically around faculty. So using this and also my own experience working in this space, I'd like to present to you the faculty critical engagement pyramid, okay? So I'm gonna right now very quickly talk through the pieces of this pyramid, and then I'm gonna give you some caveats on how people wanna use it and how I think you should use it and not use it. And then I'm gonna go into depth with each of these pieces. And as I'm talking, I want you to think about like what resonates and what feels far away, okay? So the first part of the pyramid is outside of the pyramid. So this is not just like the little piece on the bottom. This is like the whole universe of white outside the pyramid. So these are the folks who are apprehensive, okay? These are folks who are either uninterested, like, oh yeah, I didn't even know AI was a thing. They're skeptical, right, about its value and purpose and ethics. And also, they could be people who are just overwhelmed, right, don't have time. I think we saw some of that in our responses. My goal is to get you into the pyramid in some form, cross that threshold into approaching. So this is where you're like, okay, now I'm curious. I don't trust it yet necessarily. I'm not saying I have all the time in the world, but like, let me try a little something. Let me go to a workshop. Let me experiment a little bit. After exploration, you might decide, okay, like, I think I'm ready to actually start integrating it or adopting it. So you are thinking about your learning goals and you're adopting with purpose. Or, and this is where the framework I think offers a different approach, is you might decide, no, AI is not a right fit for this discipline. It might not be a right fit for this program, for this course, or even for this single assignment. So it's not just a unilateral no AI, but it's thinking very strategically about where you are abstaining, which I'm arguing is different than being apprehensive, okay? Apprehensive is fear-based. Abstention is an empowered stance. It's a stance of agency where you are making choices with evidence. So we're going to dive into that. And then at the top is advancing. So these are folks from both the adopting, abstaining mindsets who are shaping leadership, both the use, right, the ethical use, as well as the limits of AI in higher education, right? These are the people who are guiding the river and helping to inform other folks. So a few caveats about this framework. I mean, it's not that radical, but I think it brings some clarity to some things that I was bouncing around in my head as well. The first is that a lot of folks got really excited when I presented this at AAC&U. They're like, oh, can we use this to assess our campus? Can we use this to assess our faculty and to promote them upward? I said, no, there's a reason why at the top is very little. Not everybody needs to be a leader. But instead, I want this to be a tool to help faculty reflect on and navigate their own engagement with AI. I want to give you some language, not to label them. Number two is that this framework is intended to support intentional values-driven choices at every stage of engagement. So you're not ignoring your values, you're centering them as you navigate. Number three is it promotes shared understanding and digital literacy across the campus community, okay? So this is the part where folks are engaged. And next, it affirms both thoughtful use and thoughtful non-use of AI as valid and essential contributions to ethical, student-centered teaching and institutional growth. So both are valid standpoints, but you need to be very clear that you are doing it in ways that are centering student learning. And then finally, frameworks are meant to be reflective tools, not to hold people in position. If you've ever taken a personality quiz and you're like, oh, hey, like my personality type is a chipmunk, and you're like, I'd never be a chipmunk. Well, that reaction to being, labeled as something, I think that is part of the reflection practice, right? What about this resonates with you? What doesn't? What feels uncomfortable? And I want you to be willing to move up, down, sideways, circle back, and most importantly, be willing to change your mind as the context changes, because the tools in the context will continue to change. Okay, you ready to dive in a little further? Let's take a look at each of these. Okay, so first is apprehensive. So you might be feeling skeptical, overwhelmed, or unsure where to begin. There's a lot of noise around AI, and it's hard to know what's credible or relevant. When I was on the provost committee back in 2023, I was newly pregnant in my first trimester. So those of you who have been around pregnant people or have been a pregnant person know that's not a fun time in one's life. And at that moment, I was also doing this exciting project. So a lot of people were calling me in my supervisor's office asking, could I come in to their departmental meetings and tell them, like, what to do? What are the best practices? And I said, oh gosh, I don't know, but I could lead a conversation about this. So I remember specifically going into one unit. It was in the humanities. And I didn't give this talk. This is way before I had any of this thinking. But it was after writing the report, and I presented some highlights from the report, and they said, one faculty raised their hand, who actually I know quite well, and he said, Taz, I don't care about AI. He said, we are in crisis on our campus. There are students being dragged out by campus police. There is a mental health crisis happening like around campus, and that is under-supported. I'm a minority instructor, and I feel like DEI is about to be dismantled from the bottom up. I don't have time to care about generative AI. And I looked at him, I said, yep, I feel that. I absolutely feel that. I said, some days I wake up and I don't know why I'm talking about generative AI. Generative AI is actually like probably 10% of my portfolio, but it feels like I'm talking about it all the time. And I said, you know what, today might not be the day for you to talk about generative AI. Okay? Or maybe you don't need to be the one trying to strive to get to the top, but I'm telling you right now that this is changing fundamentally the environment that we're working and living in, and so I'm trying to do you a service by letting you know what's happening. And you engage as much or as little as you're willing to, but know that I'm here to support you when you're ready for that. And you know, he knows me, so he's like, okay, that's cool. But it's true. There are gonna be some days where the idea of experimenting with technology feels like a privilege, and that's because it is. It's a privilege because you have the brainwidth and the bandwidth and the mindset to be able to do that. So I do want to acknowledge that those factors do play a role in it, but I think that's why support is so important. So here are what I see as the key challenges in this, and there will be advice, don't worry. So one is there's unclear institutional expectations for engaging with generative AI. People just want to know what is the minimum that I'm expected to do? Like, do I just have to take a module? Do I just have to put in a syllabus statement? Right? Some people just want to know what the lowest bar is so that they can check it off and move on. But a lot of times we don't know what that is. Ethical discomfort or distrust around accuracy, bias, and impacts. There's a lot around AI and ethics, and some of the most horrible stories are the ones that are promoted, right? Sensationalism in the news. And I'm not saying they're not true and don't need to be heard, but they are very loud compared to some of the benefits. It's just the way that it is. And the environmental impacts are obviously things that a lot of us are thinking about, but maybe don't know enough to have a smart conversation about. And also limited time and capacity to explore the rapidly evolving AI. It feels easier to just be like, I'll just work on that next semester. Oh, I'll do that, when our curriculum changes or when the accreditation process happens. So there's lots of, reasons to fend it off. So let me give you my advice, okay? Take it or leave it. Number one is don't worry about AI. Start with your teaching values, okay? Get very clear about what your teaching philosophy is. You all had to write one to get this job, I'm assuming, right? That's part of your packet. So go back to what it is that you care about when it comes to teaching. Is it cooperation? Is it collaboration? Is it being a good citizen? Is it about being a good communicator? Remind yourself what it is and start with there, outside of institutional pressure or policy, okay? If there is no institutional policy to implement AI yet, this is actually a great moment for you to get aligned with your values before that happens, for good or for bad, okay? So this is a beautiful moment to take advantage of that. Number two is focus only on AI's relevance to your discipline and learning goals. I think some people think they need to know every single thing about AI and every single tool before they can make it. No, start tiny, teeny, tiny. Just think about how is it impacting anthropology? How is my professional organization thinking about it? How are anthropologists writing about it? How are anthropology students using it? Start small and then grow out. And then finally, listen to students and colleagues' real experiences before acting. I think we make a lot of assumptions about how and why students are using generative AI. You know how to get evidence? Don't wait for the university to do a survey. I mean, that will happen, but God, that might take a long time. We know that's just the nature of the game. You take a survey. You ask students what they think. You ask colleagues, like, hey, I noticed that you're on this AI panel. Like, can we talk about, right? Like, how did you get to this point? Didn't you struggle with some of the ethical dilemmas? How did you find time? And through learning and listening, you will get more confidence to enter the triangle. Okay, so now let's say you've done that. You're now in approaching, so you're curious and you're beginning to explore AI, but you're still cautious, you're a learner. You might be testing it privately in your own home for small tasks around the house like I did, or trying it in your teaching in low-stake ways, right? Like, hey, let's just put this prompt into an AI and let's together as a class see what happens. So here are some challenges I see in this group of folks. There are an overwhelming number of tools with little pedagogical guidance, as we know. I know the teaching centers here at Ann Arbor and all across the world, wow, God, we're making so many workshops, but there is no workshop that will teach you everything. And the workshop material gets outdated so quickly because the tools keep changing. So we understand that even from our support side. There is low confidence and fear of visible mistakes, right? Like, I don't want to tell students to use this tool, and then all of a sudden it hallucinates, and then that affects their grade, and right, those are real challenges, and so it feels better to just be risk averse and not try at all. Especially if you're early in your career, or you're a woman or a person of color, right? Like, those mistakes have higher risks. And then, of course, uncertain student or colleague reaction, like, oh gosh, are they going to judge me for using AI? Especially if I'm in a humanist field and everybody's pushing against it, like, am I going to be stigmatized for my use? And I will be honest, I myself, as somebody who is actively in this work, have felt that before. And sometimes I've been nervous to be like, oh, actually, I used AI to do this thing, and I'd love to teach you, but I'm afraid you're going to judge me for it. So that is a real challenge as well. So here's my advice. First, anchor all of your AI decisions in teaching needs, not technology trends, okay? AI is not going to be the best fit for every single scenario, but it could be the best fit for some scenarios. So I want you to use your discernment. I remember when Twitter first came out, and so many faculty came to me, they're like, oh, Twitter, like, how do I put Twitter in my class? And I would say, whoa, why do you want to put Twitter in your class? Well, you know, because all the kids are on Twitter. I said, that is not a good reason to put your class on Twitter. And so we had to talk through that. And I think that's a lot of things with new technology is you just are putting it in because you think it's new and trendy and it will help you. But I want you to really think about, where are my students struggling? How might AI help me and help my students struggle less in this area? How might it actually support learning? So that's what I mean by targeted approaches. Don't just do the same activity because the person next door did it, but I want you to think about your teaching goals first. Number 2 is experiment privately or in low-stakes learning contexts. One of the first things that I did with AI is I was at a school event for my preschooler, and they had a bake sale, as many PTOs and PTAs do. And I had this really delicious like dessert bar, and I was like, what is this? And I looked it up. It's called a 7-layer bar. I don't know if people have had this. So I looked at it, I was like, okay, like, I saw all the different recipes. I was like, let me ask, UM-GPT, like, what are the best ingredients for a 7-layer bar? I said, what about a 10-layer bar? What about a 24-layer bar? And so I kept pushing it. And to me, it was this fun experiment. I was like, okay, now generate a picture of this bar. And it was, this giant mountain. And it was just this small thing. And what it did was it forced me to be creative, or it encouraged me to be creative of like, how do I use this in a low stakes way? Now, I'm not saying do that in your class, right? But I am saying that you don't have to start with like, how do I help my students study for their comprehensive exams using AI? I think start with something very small, innocuous, get familiar with the tool, because I think a lot of people just open up the window and it's just staring at them. It's like a blank dialogue box, and they don't even know what to put in. They just put in Google questions, but it can do so much more. So start with some silly exercises. And if you're passionate about teaching your students like AI competencies, you can think about things that are related to your class that you could have them do. Again, maybe even things that are not assessments or grading. They could just be classroom activities, and just experiment. And here's the thing with experiments. Some of them fail, right? Sometimes you try something and it doesn't work. And then guess what? You try something else. But the most important thing is be transparent with your students. I think sometimes, I certainly have experienced this, but there is a lot of imposter syndrome that comes to embedding new technology, or, we've all taught a class before that we were given at the last minute, and we thought, they're gonna find out I'm just a chapter ahead of them, or I don't really know how to use this tool. I'm giving you permission today to walk into your classroom and say, hey, like, I'm really curious about how you all are using AI and like how we might incorporate this into the class. Let's have a conversation about it. We're going to try this experiment, and then afterwards, we're going to save 10 minutes to debrief how it went and what we could do differently. And I say this a lot, but I'm going to say it to you all because I'm meeting most of you for the first time, but my big philosophy around experimenting in the classroom is that don't treat your students as the lab rats, okay? Treat them as your co-scientists, okay? The experiment is happening transparently in front of them. They will be excited to participate, especially if you have created that environment of experimentation, failure, growth mindset, and we're welcome to join that as well. So be transparent with students and experiment. Okay, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You're still in the approaching bucket. So now we're moving into adopting. So these are some of the folks in the room, I think, who are like, okay, like, I kind of like AI. Like, I feel good about how purposefully I'm using it to enhance specific goals while like staying mindful of its limits, right? We all have to worry about over-reliance and some of those things, but I feel pretty good about it. But you might be feeling unsupported as you try to deepen your practice. Okay. I know there are some folks on campus, and like I have a few faculty in mind who are like in my inbox all the time. Hey, have you seen this new thing? Oh, let's talk and meet about this. And I can tell it's because they want someone to talk to about AI, and they haven't found that person yet, so they found me. And half the time I don't know what they're talking about, but I'm a good listener, right? So I listen, and I learn from them. So here are the challenges I see is that AI changes faster than faculty can meaningfully integrate it, okay? And so as soon as you change your syllabus or your assignments, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, this is outdated or we don't have permission. So yeah, it does feel like a moving target, certainly. Limited evidence-based guidance for sustained and effective use. I think this is changing. At Michigan, we are starting to do some programming and invitations for mini grants and other types of things to encourage people to experiment and then share their data out there. But that evidence base is growing, but it's still pretty limited. And especially in your field, there might not be a large evidence base. And also limited institutional support or recognition. My sense is that the leaders want to incentivize you and want to recognize you, but higher education moves at the speed we move at. And so I think having not only patience, but also not waiting for those things to happen, I think is important. So let me give you some advice for folks who are adopting. Number one is shift focus from tools to enduring teaching principles. You don't have to use the newest, hottest tool every time, okay? As long as it's not outdated, as long as it works, you can use it for a while and make sure that you're not just using it because it's new and shiny, but because it's meeting a teaching need that you have. So I want you to let go of the stress of being like at the cutting edge for every single assignment. Number two is regularly reassessing whether the practices still support the intended learning. If there's one thing the pandemic taught us, but specifically me, is we've been doing things for years and sometimes decades just because that's how it's always been done. And the pandemic forced us to think like, oh, well, every year we go on this field trip to Eastern Michigan. This is a program that I run, Preparing Future Faculty. We used to have them go on a field trip to different schools so they could learn about what it's like to be a faculty at a different institution from Michigan. And so we're like, okay, how do we do like a virtual field trip? Maybe we could do like a 3D model of the campus. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Why do we even do this field trip? Like, what is the purpose of it? Oh, the purpose is to make connections, to get mentorship, to learn about the resources and ask questions. I said, oh, well, couldn't we do that through a mentorship program? Couldn't we do that through some guest panels? Couldn't we do that through, some other longer sustained? And so what that disruption did for our program, and I imagine for a lot of other folks, is it made us go back to what is our teaching objective? What is our learning goal? And how do we use technology to support it? And sometimes technology is not the right answer. So I want you to always think about, am I just doing this because am I just assigning this 20-page paper because it's the way it's always been done? Or is there another way that I can get at authentic learning? So that's important. And then finally, documenting what works so that your effort isn't invisible. So if you know that there will be a teaching award coming out in a year from now, start documenting now so that you're ready to submit your application for that teaching award. If there's a cool project that you did, email me, email Autumn, email any of your colleagues who are working in teaching and learning. We would love to hear about that. We would love to find venues for you to publish and promote and showcase the excellent work that you are doing. So my key here is don't wait. Find those resources, and we're here to help you. Okay, so now the one that I think some folks have been eagerly awaiting, abstaining. So these are folks who, you've decided that for now, generative AI isn't the right fit for your discipline, your course, your assignment, your values, but you're still actively a part of the conversation, okay? So this is the difference between burying your head in the sand, we all know that meme, and standing tall and talking not out of frantic desperation, but out of a place of empowerment and agency. That's what I want to see. And not just naming the problems, but also actively coming up with solutions. So here are some of the the things that I've seen. So first of all is pressure to adopt despite misalignment with learning goals. Now, I'm not saying that there is pressure to adopt. Okay, I can't judge that. But if you feel there's pressure to adopt, then that's enough to influence you, right? So if you're feeling like, oh, there's so much messaging, and this is just not the right fit, that will be a challenge. Risk of stigma or marginalization, so being considered like, oh, a technophobe or a laggard or quote unquote a dinosaur, and just being told like, oh, you're just, being contrarian when really you've taken your time and thought through and like made a decision. So that's a challenge. And also there are a few visible models for ethical and intentional non-use. Okay, we don't really see those folks getting the teaching awards or publishing papers. And I would argue that we do need those models out there so that we can feel good about saying yes, because we know we're also saying no when the time is appropriate. Because both things can be true. So here's my advice for these folks. The first is frame abstention to students and to colleagues as intentional pedagogy, not resistance. Okay? If you say no AI in this class, period, I need you to say some stuff after that period. I need you to explain why. I need you to talk about how, if you think that it undermines learning, and that's the reason, then I need you to explain how abstaining from AI will actually improve your learning, and maybe not even forever. Let me tell you a story about a faculty who was teaching like a graphics design type of course. I'm trying to be vague here. And he set up a consultation with me, and he said, hey, like, Adobe Illustrator now has an AI button. So like, do I just teach that? Like, do I teach them anything else about graphic design? And I said, oh my God, thank you for calling me. Yes, for the love of Pete, like, please teach them how to be a graphic designer. And I said, okay, well, let's think through this, right? Like, what is it that you're teaching them? You're not just teaching them how the buttons work. You are teaching them to think, to identify, to be able to communicate, to be able to present themselves, to be able to connect with the community of graphic designers and the work that they do. Right? I guarantee you if, Gabriella, you came in and said, Taz, make a marketing plan for this new thing I have, and I went to Illustrator and I made something, like, it would be fine. But if you hired my partner who has a degree in art and has done graphic design for many years and has a portfolio and knows how to talk to clients and has a beautiful artistic mind, you're going to be happier with his work. Okay, because he learned to think like a graphic designer. I said that AI button is not going to be helpful without that first knowledge. I said, so what you're going to do is you're going to talk to students about it. Say, hey, I know there's a temptation to just put this into UM-GPT, right? Put it into Adobe Firefly and have it produce. We're going to do that in week 4. Okay? So we're still going to do it, but we're going to do it in week 4. And we're going to talk about why. So talk about the temptation, talk about why you're abstaining, talk about when they're going to be allowed to. And maybe we'll be like, you're not going to use it this semester, but you're going to use it in the next course in the series. Okay, this is where the departmental conversation becomes important. That's when you start having connections between why certain people are abstaining and why certain people are adopting. You're communicating with your students. Y'all picking up what I'm putting down? Okay. So, and the next point is to stay engaged through critique, policy, and dialogue throughout the term. So again, don't just say, I'm sorry, it's cut off a little bit. Don't just say it's not allowed, but come back to it, especially if you are teaching a writing course and you've decided at this level of writing, I really don't want them to use any AI. Like, let's say you've made that pedagogical decision. Know that students are going to want to use AI. They're going to want to, okay? And not just, and this is a whole other talk I could do, but I'm just going to give you a tease, and not just because they're lazy or they hate you and they don't respect you. They're going to use it because it's cool, because it's a cool tool and they want to play with it. They're going to use it because you were not very clear on what the prompt was for this assignment. And so they're struggling with their confidence and they're going to use AI to shortcut that. Or they're going to use it because they don't really think you grade the papers anyway. So like, why would I waste my time on this class when I could just use AI for this and move on? Or they're going to use it because it really does help them be better writers. And they know that from other classes, and so why wouldn't they take advantage of this here? So what I'm saying is that you need to talk to students, and you need to talk about it throughout the term, and you really need to be convinced of your decision, okay? Because students are going to resist you, whether it's visibly or invisibly, and I want you to be prepared to talk through it. And this is where I think the last piece is important, is revisit the choice to abstain as the context and tools evolve, okay? Your decision to abstain actually might still be based in fear. And as your students present ideas and ask difficult questions, it's so hard to not be defensive because we've been doing this the same way for a long time, and it feels like they're questioning like our expertise, our value as instructors, right, our decisions. That doesn't feel good, especially if you hold minoritized identities that, you know, like resistance to authority can feel very personal. But I want you to stay curious. If students think, like, hey, I did use AI, but this is why, asking why instead of getting defensive, I think can solve a lot of problems down the road. Number one, it can open up new possibilities for why AI could be useful. Number two, it could teach you a little bit about the struggles that your students are having, right? Keeping up with their work. Or number three, it could tell you that your curriculum is not as clear or transparent or equitable as you think it is, and maybe you need to adapt your curriculum. So the only way you'll know that is if you do more than just putting in a syllabus statement, okay? All right, we got one more. Advancing. So this is where, you've ascended. I'm just kidding. We've never ascended. In fact, I think most of us are just kind of hopping around this pyramid from day to day, depending on the tool and the context. But let's say you have kind of been dubbed an AI champion. We're in Michigan. We love to dub people champions, right? Because what that means is that you have done some thinking around this, right? You have done some research, you have some evidence, you are convincing, you've thought through the complexities, and so you might be an adopter or an abstainer, or somebody who I think is the best can navigate through both, right? Who can be not AI advanced, but AI agile. TM, trademark, just kidding. AI aware, right? Like things that will actually, it means that you have enough information and knowledge that you can hold both the negative and the positive and move between both. Okay, so these folks also have some challenges, okay? And sometimes it's hard to be a champion. I think one is the folks that I know who are like at the top of the pyramid trying to shape this, whether it's for or against limits or advancements, they are at risk of burnout. Okay, from sustained leadership, mentoring, and emotional labor. Okay, I know that in Ann Arbor, I know those folks very well. There are certain people that always get tapped to do these talks and to run workshops, and they feel like they're really hitting a wall, and that can be really frustrating and a lot of emotional labor there. Number two is expertise and labor remain largely invisible and unrewarded. I think similar to the folks who are not being rewarded for abstaining properly, even the ones who are adopting, again, the system is slow. Those incentives and those recognition structures aren't immediately there because we're all still catching up. And then finally, isolation from peers doing similar AI-related work. I think this is becoming less of a problem because people are expanding beyond their institutions now, and so let me get into the advice for these folks. So again, it's the top of the pyramid, so I don't expect everyone to be here. Not everyone needs to be there, okay? You're at the top of a pyramid on something else. Maybe it's on team-based learning, or you're on equity-focused teaching, or, or something else. But if you are really wanting to get into leadership and shape the limits and the use of AI at your institution and for higher education, here's my advice for you. Number one is to set boundaries to protect energy and prevent burnout, okay? Not every AI panel needs you. And in fact, maybe you could start pulling in some other people like, hey, maybe you didn't know this, but Carrie actually did this really cool assignment. Maybe we should feature her. So, set some boundaries and maybe start to pull some other folks in. Make your expertise visible through artifacts, policy input, and shared resources. So it's not just teaching rewards, it's not just titles being on particular committees, but it is through producing things in your own disciplines, in your own departmental environments, and sharing resources with other folks. Because what AI adoption looks like in anthropology or in education looks different than engineering, looks different than math or the humanities. So keep that in mind. And then finally, build cross-disciplinary peer communities to distribute leadership and reduce isolation. And I'm telling you, your teaching centers, your staff are working really hard to create those spaces. At Michigan, oh my gosh, if I had a little pin for every learning community and community of practice and workshop I've done, those spaces are there. We're doing our best to bring them to you. But just like you, we are also having to navigate a world where there's lots of competing priorities as well. And so to that end, I think I invite collaborations between our campuses, okay? So now you know who I am. I'm at umich.edu, Tazdan at umich.edu, so reach out to me. Let's think about how we can partner. But also looking to organizations like AAC&U and your own disciplinary professional organizations. Maybe go to that special interest group meeting and find out what other historians or mathematicians are doing. Okay. So that's the framework. I said it really fast, but it did take an hour. So I'm just curious, what, if anything, stuck out to you or clarify in this time together? And it could be a new idea, or it could be an affirmation of an idea. But I think it's always helpful for me to know what worked, and also what are some things that we can bring into our next set of conversations, especially with the panel. Okay, keep them coming. I'm just going to start playing some of the responses. So clarity, everyone has a place that's personal to them and their needs. It's okay to have concerns. Opportunities for intentional choice. Keeping decisions rooted in my teaching philosophy. I'm not alone in my slow adoption. Affirming abstention as an informed choice. That all of us don't need to be at the top of the pyramid. Different levels of engagement are okay. Respect for diversity of experiences, ethics, and practices. Not trying to assimilate everyone into one box. How much water does it use to generate a photo? My understanding, it's one charge of your iPhone is like the most simple one that obviously there's some differences, so I do keep that in mind when I generate images. How do I offset it with other technology used that day? Different ways and levels of engagement. The attitudes towards AI are multifaceted, always changing. It made me a bit more curious about AI, that abstention is valid, that there's a spectrum of adoption and there's okay. For or against, we're all struggling. Permission to engage or abstain based on values. Balancing adopting and abstaining is okay. This is wonderful. I have one last slide to share, so keep those responses coming. Purpose is better than pressure. Pressure to adopt, pressure to abstain, pressure to engage, pressure to hide and run away. You know your class, you know your students, you know your discipline better than everyone, so I want you to start with your purpose and confidently explore so you can make an informed decision. Critical engagement is not about keeping up with AI, it's about staying aligned with your learning goals and your values, and those things can coexist. So with that, thank you. It sounds like Carrie said we have time for a couple of questions. Let me just see where the exits are in case people ask me anything too hard. I have been known to hide under a table if needed. But yeah, happy to run the mic to anybody.
We'll have a faculty panel after. We'll take a break and then do a faculty panel, but if you have any questions now, we're happy to. Sounds like people vote for break as I think about it. So we'll take a 10-minute break. Oh, we do have a question. Okay, perfect.
So much for your talk.
Thanks,
There's so many helpful ways of getting us to think about AI and its role, but I was thinking about the river metaphor and why it's a great one, and thinking about how we collectively need to shape the river, but there's also kind of another river outside of us that's going in a lot of different directions around AI. And so I guess from your point of view and all the work you've done, efforts to shape the river from within institutions of higher ed, how confident do you feel that they'll help to also set boundaries and limits on the wider river outside of us?
Yeah, I think there are lots of people who are qualified to answer this question better than me, but I want to give you some initial thoughts. So one is we have a lot of power as an institution. The kind of power I think you have the most access to is your students. These are not just folks that are transient, but they are the ones who are going to be shaping the future. They're going to be the policymakers and the voters and the parents raising the kids and the ones investing in the stock market that's funding these things. So if you want to talk about ethics, that's not just a passing thing. It has to be built into your curriculum to some point, right? And so when we talk about ethical use, it's not just going to happen without our guidance. Without our guidance, they're just going to go with the flow of the river. Right, the river is designed to be attractive and hard to resist. Academia is known as a place where we kind of can pause and look at those things, and so I think that's the place where we have the most impact. But I think in other levels that I think maybe some of the administrators can talk to is we also have buying power. You know, I think there are particular reasons why U of M has invested in our own technology instead of partnering out and outsourcing to other places, because it does allow us to have some control. I know with other institutions I've talked to where the environment and indigenous rights and anti-racism are core to their values, I've told them, great, slow down. You don't have to be a University of Michigan. You can move slowly and deliberately, and you can use your buying power to only work with organizations and vendors that align with your values. But you can only make those decisions if you're very clear about what your role and your values are. And I'm sure there are many other ways that we can do it too. But it's a long process, right? Also, other big forces like racism, right? We can talk about racism. We can shape a more beautiful future, but we cannot directly end it. Right, we don't have to pull the cord, just like we can't stop the bad things on any part of society. But I think that's the thing, as academics, we are trained to engage with the more complex parts of society and life. So this isn't any different. Yeah.
All right, so we'll go on a break now. We'll come back in 10 minutes with our faculty panel.
Thanks, everyone.
So I think that first hour of conversation was really thoughtful and amazing, and I like that it gives people permission to be careful in their classes. I think everybody around here knows me. My name is Joan Remsky. I'm currently serving as Vice Provost for Research and Dean of Grad Studies. I'm also a professor of mathematics. So being careful is in my second nature, so I really appreciate that part of the conversation this morning. I want to introduce my friends here on this amazing faculty panel. We'll start over here on the left. We have Shelley Jurenski, Associate Professor of English Literature, Jason Song, Assistant Professor of Computer and Information Science, Barbara Klein, Professor of Information Systems Management, Masoud Durant, Professor of Educational Technology, the amazing Autumn Keynes, instructional designer at the Hub for Teaching and Learning. If you remember only one person on this panel, please make sure it's Autumn. Wow. She is here to help. She has done some amazing work in this space and is a dedicated resource for our campus. So I just want to make sure that you're all aware of the work that she does. Next to Autumn, Besa Jabia, Associate Professor of Biochemistry. And our special guest of honor, Taz Daniels. So thank you all so much. Moderating our panel will be Stein Brunvand, Associate Professor for Digital Education. So take it away, Stein.
Thank you very much. So for our panelists, you've accomplished the hardest part of the day. You've ascended into the dreaded high chair and for the moment have not fallen over, so well done, well done. I just want to mention before I ask the first question that we did not assemble this panel so that we could have a group of people here to tell you about how awesome AI is and why you should use it in everything you do. We put together a panel that we hoped would be representing a variety of disciplines, a variety of perspectives, be across a broad spectrum of ideas here. And so we hope that you see that in the responses that they share. For the panelists, we've got a variety of questions, some that were submitted from people who RSVP'd for the event, and some that we wrote up as a planning group. And it's not necessary that you all respond to every single question. With the exception of the first one, I think it would be helpful if we did hear from you all for this first one. So I appreciate you being willing to share the microphone. So that first question is, how did you first begin integrating AI into your teaching or research, and what motivated you to do so? Or if you're not at a point where you are necessarily integrating AI, maybe when did you first maybe create an adaptation to an assignment because AI existed in your world and you felt you had to deal with that?
So that's me. I actually don't use AI in my teaching, but I have adapted my teaching a lot to exist in a world with AI. And I would say, I guess, 2023 or 24 was when maybe Autumn and I first started working together. I was a hub liaison. That was what really launched me into it. And I teach online a lot, and I teach English, so there's a lot of writing. And the reason I love teaching online, and I do love teaching online, is that I could hear from everybody, no one hid in the back. And then with AI, I'm like, oh, I don't know who I'm hearing from. I don't know whose voice this is. So that really prompted me to want to try and exist in this new reality.
So this is Zheng. I'm from the Computer and Information Science department, right? So naturally, I use AI for my research, for my teaching, right? So I remember the first time I actually think about seriously using AI in my teaching was in 2022 or 2023, where the students are using AI to create their projects, right? So and then I was thinking about like, do they learn from it, or are they just using it to do something without learning, right? So that is the first thing. And in my research, I actually use AI a lot to help me polish my paper, to criticize my paper as a reviewer, right? And now I'm starting using AI to do the coding part.
I first encountered AI in August of 1985 while working at IBM. And I was quite bored that month. There wasn't really enough work. And so I was casting about for work and was charged with writing a white paper about what IBM should do in the AI space. And I really fell in love with it. And so for me, it's kind of been an evolution. And I guess in terms of teaching, I've not this generative AI stuff, but I've been teaching AI since maybe something like '93, doing research related to errors and bias and things like that in neural network models, starting in the '90s. And so I'm completely delighted that the whole world has joined me and this kind of love affair I've had with AI. And in the College of Business, I would say, we've really kind of embraced this starting just a few years ago. We've redone the MS&IS, centering it on AI. And we have a new first-year program for undergraduate students that has a lot of AI infused into it.
Well, my first encounter is not teaching nor research, but still relevant, I believe. If you didn't know, Stein and I, we are in the same department, same research area, educational technology. 3 years ago, we were making major revisions to our educational technology program. So the program now is called Instructional Design and Learning Technologies. So our enrollment was kind of flat around that time. So we were looking at how we can expand the program and try to involve more students, reach out to more audience in a sense. So with that goal in mind, we got market analysis. Thank you very much to Provost Office for that. So market analysis was showing that instructional design is actually an area that we can expand. So starting from that point, we wanted to look at who's offering what kind of instructional design, learning technologies around the nation. So to our account right now, we have about 100 doctoral programs in this area, instructional design, learning technologies, educational technology. We have 250 plus master's degrees around the nation. And then around 50 undergraduate degrees offering major and minor. So we wanted to screen them all in a short time. And that's where AI came to the play. And we asked the question, particularly for like common courses, the areas of interest and et cetera, that help us to reshape the program that what we have right now, particularly helped us to create like 3 new courses, one of them being internship, which is, we are proud. That was the first encounter. Thank you.
Does that still work? Okay, cool. So I can't go back as far as Barbara did, but I did start paying a little bit of attention to AI prior to November of 2022. I started building like Twitter bots and that kind of thing, probably like 2017 or so. I'm a technologist, but I am at that intersection between like technology and humanity, but I cut my teeth in IT. And so I like technology. So yeah, I mean, when I had a chance to talk to a computer and it was going to talk back to me, like, oh my God, this is amazing. So yeah, I dove in and I started playing with the technology. At the same time, again, the other side of me, that side of me that loves teachings and loves the humanities side of thing. And I work for faculty, right? Faculty are the ones that I serve. I knew the hype was going to be off the charts, right? I knew there were going to be a lot of people pushing adoption and really kind of pushing us to maybe go a little faster than we need to. So I sort of tried to cut that balance between understanding what this technology could do and while at the same time sort of questioning, if we should do certain things with it. So that's sort of how I got my start in it.
For me, that's pretty loud. For me, the motivation was workforce alignment. So the majority of the students that go through my classes are students that want to go to medical school, dental school, professional schools. And these programs are now expecting the incoming students to have AI literacy skills as well as critical judgment. So it was my intent to have them engage with AI kind of thoughtfully and critically before they graduate, rather than encounter that later.
Hi again. I can remember the first time I saw AI in action. It was November, December of 2022, and in Ann Arbor, in our teaching center, I run our technology interest group, and somebody brought it in and said, "Oh, I wanted to play with it," so I put in a prompt for a class that I teach, and so she did in front of us, sharing her screen on Zoom, and it just wrote the paper in front of us. And I remember I had a big smile on my face, like, whoa, that's so cool. And then I looked at the look of terror on her face, and she said, oh my God, what do I do now? And that was my first encounter with it. And since then, I have been, putting on all the faces as I look back and forth. And so that's been my primary engagement, is thinking about applications in teaching and learning. Thank you.
That's a perfect segue, because as you might imagine, some of the questions that were submitted had to do with academic integrity, but also with the ethical dilemmas, maybe we could say, around AI. So we're going to come to academic integrity, but if we can think about ethical concerns first. And with those, we, of course, have concerns about biased information that we might be getting, hallucinations, inaccurate information that's created by generative AI, and environmental concerns. We don't have to look very far at our own university to know about data centers being built, impact on communities, and what that means, and the electricity that is required for this. So as we think about those ethical concerns and those different dilemmas, can you share a little bit about how you balance those as you think about using AI, whether it be in your teaching or research, and the decisions you make about what you're going to use or perhaps not use?
So I think it will be important, at least from what the research that I've done, is to connect the AI tools with the learning goals of the class. So if, for example, I have a class where I'm teaching how to write a lab report, then obviously AI tools might be limited. But if I have a class where I'm looking at data analysis, maybe I can use AI to do a data visualization. And then we can look at how the data is trending, or if there is outliers. So I think if we redesign the assignment to focus on reasoning, I think we might be in the right track. That's just the way at least I see it.
I was just going to say, I think it, for thinking about it personally, just thinking about being intentional with my use. I mean, I'm not perfect. I use it for some silly things sometimes. I saw a prompt on Reddit to ask it, because I have the memory turned on in ChatGPT, so it kind of knows me a little bit. And so the prompt was, generate an image of somebody living or dead that, like a famous person, that you think reflects me and reflects my my personality. And I got Ada Lovelace, and I was just like, oh my God, that's so cool, right? That's a really good one, pioneering woman computer scientist, right? But I thought about that afterwards. I was like, yeah, that was like a charge of my phone, right, to generate that image, and did I really need to do that? So, I mean, I make mistakes sometimes, but I try to be intentional about my usage and try to use it Again, going back to the point that not everybody needs to use it all the time. I feel like my usage has to be a little bit higher because I have to teach people about it. I have to be informed about it. But yeah, just trying to think about how I use it before I use it. And then also informing people, staying informed myself about those environmental impacts, about those societal impacts, and not being afraid of those conversations.
Let me share an example, which is quite dilemma, I will say. This just happened this past week in one of my class. I'm teaching instructional design fundamentals. So just very briefly, first we focus on like goal setting, and then subordinate skills and entry skills and et cetera. It kind of gives you a nice flow. And I ask creating flowcharts based on, the flow of the instructional process. And I typically require Google Docs and see their progress, comment on it, and et cetera. I saw one paper, the flowchart needing a kind of better design. And typically I don't, but I said, you can use AI for the flowchart creation if you want to, which was honest comment, I believe. And some students use, and that creates nice flowcharts. This particular student, I have a feeling that she has Native American ancestry, and she wrote a comment, almost kind of touched my nerve in a sense, saying that, no, thank you. Only 40% of the people in the reservation has clean water. So that's a quite dilemma that we need to face. Thank you.
In the business school and in my discipline, information systems, I would say that ethical and social issues have always been built into the DNA of what we do. It's in our accreditation guidelines. We probably don't ever teach a class in information systems where we don't touch on ethical and social issues. And some of that's related to what you say, Masood. There have been lots of issues. The digital divide, we saw some of that in the pandemic and on and on. And so I would say, when we're dealing with AI in the coursework now, it's just a matter of conversation. It's in the assignments. We're always considering it. And I really like Taz's point earlier. We're influencing, we're in community with people who are going to determine what the world's like in the future, right? So the more we talk about these things, the more they're in people's heads, whether they're in government positions or business positions or parents or just in citizens, just in their everyday lives. And I'll probably talk about the first year program a lot today because it's on my mind this semester. But right from the first year in the BBA, we're talking about these ethical and social issues in AI. That class it has kind of the intersection of business and technology and professional skills. And there's one week where we're explicitly talking about ethical and social issues, but I wanted to have a business discipline wedded to it. So I thought marketing. I wanted to bring marketing into it. And I was working on it late one night when Dean Brunel sent me this email. I think that he can read my mind. And it was about this notion of customer lifetime value, which is like from the company's point of view, how do I get the most value out of Masood, right? And AI is certainly going to be a helpful thing for that. But then there's ethical and social issues involved in that, right? And then I used AI to write a couple of short cases about that and kind of crafting this assignment. So there's a lot of issues to it, right? What are we teaching students about it? What about our own use of it? There's a lot of things to consider.
So I want to focus more on my domain, software engineering, right? So imagine like you will be living in a world where software are mainly done by AI, right? Is that scary? Like, yeah. So sometimes I kind of feel like I try to build a sense of like to my students that you should be using your judgment, you should be responsible for the outcome, right? So I think that is important, but I kind of feel that is currently lacking like last semester, I have assignment where like the student need to reflect on something, right? And then I receive something writing like, okay, so insert the name of your professor here. Yeah. So we are actually running AI workshop. Like we are trying to build AI for our course, right? So basically teaching not only our students, right, but all students, like they should learn the AI mindset, like how to use your own judgment, when to build agency, like when to be responsible, right? You need to be responsible.
One thing that I guess AI has done for me, even as someone who doesn't actually use it a lot, is that it's forced me to ask fundamental questions. So there's some ethical things that I hadn't even thought about, and one is privacy. I don't think I really thought about privacy almost at all before I started working with AI and just thinking about it. And now, like, I try not to have my students sign up for anything. You know, if they can't just like Padlet is something I used last semester. If they can't access it without making an account, I don't really want to use it. If they do access it, something like Perusal, they're at least going through the school and the school's vetted it and whatever. So just in general, like with AI, having to ask yourself some fundamental questions that you maybe haven't asked yourself in a while. Oh, and that's why I always encourage students to use UM-GPT, even though I don't think they want to at all. But just like it protects your privacy, it protects your data, it protects your peers' privacy if you're using it for peer review, which you shouldn't be doing, but you are. So try and do it responsibly. So just, yeah, asking myself the questions I didn't know to ask myself.
So, Taz, yeah.
I could just talk about bias for a second because I don't think.
Sure, yes.
Yeah. You all did the hard ones, so I'll take one for the team too. So I think what's interesting around bias and large language models is like, yes, absolutely, it's biased, but so is everything. Is there such thing as something that's not biased, and is our goal to try to remove the bias from something, or is it an opportunity for us to teach our students about bias? I think that's where bias is dangerous, is when it goes like unconscious or invisible. And so something I've been working on is like how to use AI and have conversations around bias. So yes, I think we should do a better job and be more inclusive and be more anti-racist and thinking about how we're producing these models. But in the meantime, I think actually it can be a really great tool to teach about those things.
Excellent. So Shelley and Barb, you started talking about what you do to teach your students about AI. And Masoud, your example was maybe a good example of how our students can teach us about AI, right? So I'm wondering if you all could share some more about strategies you use to teach students about AI, to teach students about these ethical concerns, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that knowing that when they go out into whatever profession they're going to go into, they're likely going to need to use it in some shape or form. So how do we fully prepare them to do that?
Yes, me. So what I've integrated into my class is, again, aligning with the learning goals. I've integrated already pre-vetted individual modules from Michigan Online. So I'll just take two examples. One class that I teach is Biochem 370. It's a pretty large class. It's about 45 students, and they are non-majors, and they all want to go to medical school. So I integrated two modules there. So the first one is Google certificates in AI Essentials. So in there they learn, good communication, bias awareness, critical thinking. Another tool that I used for this semester was Data MD. So this is a AI tool for clinicians to help them to diagnose patients. And so they are aware of both of these tools, before they graduate. So they get a certificate plus they get the degree plus the knowledge of AI literacy. So also the National Academy of Medicine is also requiring both of these ethical and the legal limitations of AI. So they need to know that. So, but for another class, and this one is a laboratory class, and it's a data-intensive class for majors. We do a lot of data analysis there. And so in there, I've incorporated another AI tools from Michigan Online, and that'll be for data visualization and data analysis. So again, tailoring it with the learning goals of each class, and then where the students need to go after graduation.
I can give an example from education. Most of teachers at this particular time, they are utilizing AI for lesson planning. And I brought that idea to my 400 level course where students design lessons, they are in the field, they implement and reflect on it. And AI component of it is basically teaching them how to write correct prompts for lesson planning. To give you an example, like if you ask AI, give me a lesson plan about water cycle, you get something, right? But then if you say, I need a lesson plan about water cycle applying inquiry pedagogy, you got something else. But even you can extend saying that I have English as a second language students, I'm gonna teach them water cycle through inquiry-based learning, so you got something else. So our current AI integration in that particular class is around this notion of how you ask the right question to get the answer that you are looking for. Thank you.
So I tried, sorry, my answer is going to be a little touchy-feely because I'm the English professor, so. But I talk to my students about it, and I talk to my students about it as much as I can, and I don't always, you have to make time because it's not like naturally in the class. Another thing that has helped is talking about them using text. So when talking with them about AI using text. So when I first started, I was asking more kind of generic questions, and I feel like they've got some pat answers down, and they're always like, oh, as long as it's a tool and not doing my work for me, you know. So now I use texts either on perusal or sometimes I'll have a podcast, we'll listen to it in class, so that we all have something specific to respond to. It depersonalizes it for them too, because they don't want to say how they're using it, but if they have an example of how someone else is using it, then they can talk about it. And so just, talking about it with them and using specific examples just to get them to open up a little more and to put ideas on the table, and using text too, sometimes things come up that we're not thinking about, so.
So I think I have three things. For, I think about 6 years, I've taught a class that people take at the end of their graduate programs, which about a third of it is focused on AI as a disruptive technology in organizations, and how that affects organizational structure and things of that nature. And in that class, I use pretty straightforward things, you know, readings and cases and discussions and things of that nature. In the first year program, I want to second the endorsement of the Michigan Online Certificates, which we're going to have students do 3 of those in that class, along with readings and project work and things like that. But those certificates are fabulous. I have to confess, only a few people know this, over the semester break, I very leisurely, very casually did the certificates that I want to assign in class. I think I actually did about 5, and 2 of them I didn't really like, and the 3 of them I loved. The ones I didn't like weren't created at the University of Michigan. They were created, they were just a little too boring, I think, for the first year students. But they're fabulous, and they're pretty fun to do, and I think they're a way of saying, look, I'm overwhelmed in my class with this. I've got a lot that I'm trying to do, and it's pretty straightforward to have some of the content delivered in those certificates and then brought back into the classroom. The other thing that I have found to be a surprisingly good tool to start the discussion about ethical and social impacts of AI, especially in a face-to-face class, is the required syllabus statement. At the beginning of the semester, I was grumbling about this. And not the campus one, but that you have to have a classroom one. And I grumbled about it in a department meeting, and in many ways, I don't like it. But I do it, of course. You know, I'm asked to do it, I do it. Right, so I'm compliant but grumbly. And I'll confess, the reason I don't like it is I don't have a statement in my syllabus that says, what are the conditions under which you can use a spreadsheet? What are the conditions under which you can use a word processor? And so you can just imagine with my, my 40-year love affair with AI, why would I say, what are the conditions under which you can use this marvelous thing? But anyway, I went into class the first week and I was grumbling about it a tiny bit. And I said, I wish I didn't have to have this in the syllabus, but we're going to look at it. And I wish I didn't, have it because these are, so it's what Shelley's saying. We're just starting a conversation, right? These are my beliefs about AI. And immediately they had beliefs about AI, and they were ethical and social beliefs that they started talking about the first day of class. They couldn't stop talking about it. So now I love the statement, I guess.
Did they have any ethical social beliefs about Microsoft Word or Excel?
Well, that's an interesting point. I didn't probe those. I'll ask next fall.
I'm learning so much about you, Barbara.
Yeah. Maybe they do. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I piggyback on this?
Sure.
Barbara? Yeah. So I have been reading some LinkedIn comments saying that AI is another type of technology. And someone used the hammer analogy, like this is the hammer that you can build so many things. It's a technology. And then I was thinking about this is a kind of spoiler alert for my Castle presentation coming in April. To me, yes, hammer is a technology, but when I put that hammer on the table, it doesn't do anything by itself. It just stays there. I think AI is a wild horse. When you put it on the side, you never know what's going to do. Thank you.
I would say, my personal opinion is that at least I don't know, at least I feel like I don't know better than my students about AI. Like with the so fast evolvement of AI nowadays, right? I don't think I have more additional knowledge than my students. So I try to work with my students. I try to encourage them to explore, and I explore with them. So in my previous classes, I told the student that you are welcome to use AI as long as you feel it's benefit your learning. So the student told me a lot of new things, like they're using different tools to study, they are creating quizzes for themselves, and they are telling me different things they are trying, and I would try it with them. And some of it even convert to papers. I like the students' exploration. They're now regarding the age of, we are in the age of generative AI, right? I don't think I have additional knowledge. So we are on the same beginning point, and they have more people than myself, right? So I kind of I'm willing to explore with them.
So I feel like this has been addressed in different ways, academic integrity, but I want to kind of ask the question explicitly and give you a chance to respond. And thinking about, we've often all heard about the concerns about how AI teaches students to copy and paste, but not engage with the content. And it undermines critical thinking and problem solving. And of course, concerns about academic integrity and how easy it makes it to cheat. So some of you have shared how you approach assignments, and it sounds like some effective ways to deal with those things, but I'm wondering if there's other things that people want to share in relation to those concerns.
I was just going to say that something that I've done with students in the past when I do get the opportunity to teach sometimes is having, going back to the idea of having conversations with them, right, about some of the research around what it does to learning, I think is really important, right? There's the Your Brain on ChatGPT paper out there. If you guys aren't familiar with it, I definitely recommend that you look it up, right? Where they put people into an MRI, an fMRI scanner, and they had folks who used an AI to write a paper, and then folks who used Google to write a paper, and then they had folks who didn't use really anything, right? They use like library resources, yeah. And, they actually see less brain activity when you, when you use an AI agent, even if you're using it in like a critical way, like it is just doing a certain lift. Now the researchers go out of their way to say like, this doesn't mean that like AI is rotting your brain, like don't use that kind of language, right? Like the brain is very plastic and what we're maybe giving up over here, maybe we're making up over here, but the point is we don't really know yet. Like we're still trying to figure a lot of that out. So I think engaging students in that conversation and sharing some of that research with them can go a long way.
So for me, I always think about the world of work. And that's kind of a privilege working at a business school, right? I know where my students are going and what they are going to do. And the alumni talk to me, so there's kind of a feedback loop. So my thinking about what's going on in the classroom is very situated in that. And so what I'm going to say I don't think applies to everybody. I don't think it applies to a writing class, et cetera, et cetera. But in that context, I feel that if I wake up in the morning and I'm anxious about academic integrity, it's a symptom that something in my class is designed in a way that is out of sync with what my students are going to need, because they are going to be living and working in collaboration with AI-based agents. And so for me, if I forbid those agents to have some role in things that are going in the class, it's at odds with where my students are headed. One thing I noticed this winter in the class I teach that's about AI as a disruptive technology in business, this is an online class, and it's been taught for 6 years, and there's discussion boards as one does. And in the first week, students talk about AI in their business and industry. These are working students. And I was reading them in January, and I suddenly thought, these are different than they've ever been before. Collectively, they're different. And I went back and read through them and thought about them. And there's been a shift in the work experience these students are having, where they are doing their routine work is gone. And they are doing work that requires higher order thinking, higher impact work that is more focused on strategic stuff. And they talk about it, they're reflecting on it. The prompt doesn't force them to, but that's what they're doing. And it just kind of reinforces this notion that I can't set up an environment where being in collaboration with an AI agent is a moral offense, because it's I've confessed, I love it. But even if I hated it, I can't view it as a moral offense, right? Now, I say that, but again, the first year program, there are things people need to learn developmentally, right? And so in that class, I'm going to have in classroom, paper and pencil, closed book exams as a part of the assessment. Some of my colleagues screamed about this. They're like, well, how do you know that these people actually know this stuff? I mean, that's a thing you can do, right? When you need to know, what can you do without an AI agent? That's certainly one way to find that out.
If I could add to that, I have been reading about this topic. These are what I am observing from my readings. So academic integrity issue is real. We cannot ignore this one. But the suggestions that I'm reading, this is maybe for the policy, the development for the administration, is that they are suggesting that we should not create academic integrity discussion separately for AI. Academic integrity is academic integrity. We need to talk about it as a kind of one big ethical concern, right? So that's one thing. Another piece, interesting piece that I'm getting from my reading, that academic integrity cheating, perhaps, or having someone to do your work, or have AI to do your work, have different level of, what's right for that? Different level of impact at different levels. So this is different at the higher education level, for instance, if someone does your work, or something does your work, compared to at the third grade level where the fundamental skills are so critical. If we miss them at that level, developing those fundamental skills, it's much more impactful for those students compared to, let's say, at the higher education level, someone is writing your essay or something is writing your essay.
I was just going to say, we have to believe that at least some of them care about their own learning and their own critical thinking and their own, developmental abilities. And they're going to get busy and they're going to sometimes get scared, and tools are there, and sometimes tools are integrated into the word processing system. But I think what Autumn was saying, like, you share the research with them, you ask them, like, are you worried about your critical thinking when you use AI? Are you worried about, and I do think that matters, and because I think that at some level they do care about that. I've also, and this is easier for me because I don't use AI a lot, but I use it here and there. I'm trying to be curious and experimental. But I tell them when I use it, because I'm trying to get them to tell me when they use it, because I'm like, you're not forbidden from using it, so tell me when you use it. So, if I merge two sets of notes from two classes using AI, I'll tell them, I wrote these notes 3 years ago, and then I used AI to merge them, and then I revised them based on what I've learned since then. So transparency, and then also tapping into what they care about, and they care about themselves and their learning.
Yeah, to build off that beautiful point, I think I have so many thoughts on academic integrity. Okay, so one is, I think when we feel like students are cheating, we feel like it's a personal affront to us, that it's disrespectful. How dare they? I spent so much time designing this assignment, they just threw it into AI. So I think we've gotten some great examples of humanizing our students, that there are lots of reasons that they do it, not always a personal attack. And so I think it's a natural human reaction to try to want to control and prevent that from happening. So you can spend your energy on the front end trying to figure out every way to detect it and block it, or you can spend it building trust and relationship with your students. And I think we've got some great examples of what that looks like. And I do agree that academic integrity as a whole is important, but I do think Gen AI does complicate things. In the sense that what counts as a violation in one class might not in another class, and so how transparent the instructors are being, how clear those roles are, I think we're grappling with that right now. And the last thing I'll say is, just kind of building on your point again, is part of, I think, what we're teaching students is how to think about thinking and to be metacognitive and reflective. And I know there's this desire to earmark every single time you use AI. I've seen people say you can use it, but just tell me when you do, and submit every prompt that you use, and print out all of your, oh my God, that's like a 400-page paper for just this one keynote, for example, that I have used AI to support me in this, and so instead, what I recommend is have them write a reflection at the end of the semester about how did AI impact my learning in this class? What was useful? What wasn't? How might this shape my decisions around AI in the future? What am I still grappling with? How might, So then you're developing actual literacy and fluency, and not just somebody who is trying to stay in these moving lines of policy. Because eventually they're going to go out there where those policies don't exist in the same rigid ways. So we should prepare them now. Thanks, Dan.
So we're just about out of time, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity with all these administrators in the room to ask you, and you don't all have to go through and answer this, but what do you think we need here at the University of Michigan-Dearborn? Safeguards, policies, maybe not policies, resources, whatever the case may be, to ensure that AI is used in a way that does not compromise the educational mission of this institution. And don't worry, no one's going to get fired. I always ask them, you can say anything, you've got, for the next 2 minutes, doesn't count.
It's quick. It's really quick. Community and conversation.
Modeling by ourselves.
The first thing I want to note is I think the University of Michigan has done such a fabulous job of putting these resources together for us. So we've done a lot. The second thing is maybe more controversial. I think we need to reimagine space because when the AI agent enters the room, the model of having students sit tightly together listening to us, I think that is the dinosaur, right? And we're more like in a studio mode. Or I took a college class in stagecraft, and people need a lot of space. We're doing things, we're building things, we're interacting. And I think we need to think about how we're going to use space to support that kind of teaching and learning. We have some, and I think the pressure will be more and more over time.
So I asked a few high school students from Michigan and from other states, and most of them told me that in their high school, they're forbidden from using AI. The teachers doesn't allow them to use AI. And all of a sudden, we expect them to know how to use AI effectively, how to use AI responsibly in our class, right? That is hard. I would advocate for a first-year class AI literacy course for students of all majors. So that's what I'm thinking.
I actually had the same sentiment. I was teaching a 210 class in biochem, and I was asking them how was high school, and they were saying that in their high school it was either banned or they were actually using it. So I think it would be beneficial to capture students in the first year, but also capture them before they graduate, because by the time they've reached year 4, AI literacy has evolved a lot. So that'll be my guidance. She has more questions.
No? Well, I want to take, Masood, did you have something else you want to?
The comment reminded me, part of the orientation maybe, talking about AI use.
Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of the panelists for sharing your thoughts and your time with us. And I would ask everyone to look away while they dismount so that you don't, and then Carrie is going to come on up to introduce our next speaker.
That was amazing. I don't know when I have been in a venue where faculty members were being as honest and open and vulnerable about AI and about their thoughts and about their struggles and just being open about things they still don't know and are struggling with. So thank you so very much for explaining all that and explaining what you're learning from your students. And one little thing I just wanted to tack on was mentioned a couple of times. Any of the content that's out there on Michigan Online, which is short, long, medium, is free to University of Michigan faculty, staff, and students and can be integrated into your courses, so a little advertisement for that. And I'm sure that Autumn would be happy to help you figure out how to do that. And we do have newly-ish access to all the Google certificate programs there as well, so it's an amazing resource for you. So I'm next going to introduce our last part of the program, which is going to be Dr. Ravi Pensy, who's the Vice President for IT and the Chief Information Officer and Professor of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at the University of Michigan College of Engineering in Ann Arbor. He's also an executive officer of the university and a successful researcher in areas like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, the Internet of Things, and the future of work, and a friend and advisor to students. And as many of our faculty do, Ravi has co-authored many journal articles with students. It was mentioned recently, the tools that we have, or was mentioned in this session, some of the tools we have at the university. In the fall of 2023, under Ravi's leadership, as some of you know, U of M became the first university to roll out a suite of Gen AI tools that were designed to be secure for university and personal use, cost-effective and accessible to all faculty, staff, and students, and notably for us, Ravi was adamant that that mean all faculty, staff, and students at all 3 campuses, which is typical of his approach and very much appreciated here. This was absolutely groundbreaking and continues to be remarkable across the world to this day as the tool set has continued to be refined and expanded. Dr. Pensy provides university-wide leadership, obviously, and strategic direction for information technology. And prior to joining U of M, he served as Brown University's Vice President for Computing and Information Services and CIO. And then he also came from spending a number of years of his career at Wichita State as the Vice President for Information and Technology and Chief Information Officer, so he does understand the regional university for sure. In 2023, the other part of Robbie's hat, if you can believe the hats that he wears, is much like many of us. We have many. He was named the university's first ever special advisor to the president for India. And in this role, he collaboratively leads and coordinates efforts to engage with U of M alumni and industry leaders in India and promote U of M to exceptional Indian students looking to continue their education abroad. And we're privileged to have many of those students here with us as well. Dr. Pensy has a BS in Electronics and Communication Engineering from Osmania University in Hyderabad, India, an MS and PhD in Electrical Engineering from Wichita State University, as I mentioned. So he is one of us. Sometimes we have folks come from Ann Arbor who have not lived the campus experience that we do here, and Robbie is certainly not one of those individuals. So please warmly welcome Robbie Pensy.
I forgot to tell Carrie to keep my introduction short. I just wanted her to say, this is Ravi, and that's good enough. Because really, I mean, all of those things that were mentioned, those were accomplished because I had the opportunity to work with some of the most amazing students in my life and incredible staff, both here at Dearborn as well as Ann Arbor and Flint. And so really the credit for everything that she said goes to a bunch of other people. If you want to give me credit, you can give credit for, like, he just knows how to be at the right place at the right time, maybe, you know. And I'm so glad that I'm here today because I learned so much in the last couple of hours. Taz was amazing. The faculty panel was just incredible. And so it's just a privilege and honor to be here. I actually start all my presentations with a Sanskrit phrase that my mother taught me when I was very, very young. The phrase goes something like this, Acharya Deva Bhava. Acharya is teacher. Teacher is made in the image of God and should be respected as one would respect God. And she taught me to see a teacher in everyone I had a chance to interact with. And all of you have been just absolutely amazing teachers today, and I hope our learning will continue as we have chance to have this dialogue. I'm gonna need a minute to set up my laptop as you think about it, but as I'm setting up the laptop, one of the things I want you to think about, and Taz did a really good job of using poll everywhere to ask your questions, but what I would love for you to think about is, when you very first time used generative AI tools, what did it feel like, very first time? Just think about that among yourself, and then I'll ask you that question. I'll ask a few people to respond to that. The second question I'll be asking you is, when you were in college, what was your hardest class? So those are two questions I want you to think about as I set up the laptop. And then I'll start with the second question first, about your hardest class. And those are usually the fun ones, because people have some really interesting stories to share about that. And we'll take those answers to those two questions as I connect. Just give me 1 second. So as you're thinking about this, so let's start with the second question first. Anybody wants to volunteer? What was your hardest class? Yeah, please.
The intellectual history of modern Europe.
You know, AI can do that. No, I'm kidding. No, others, please. One more. Anybody else? Yeah, please, go ahead. Employment what? Law, okay, I see, I hear you. Okay, anybody else? I think somebody had a... Oh, no, you know my answer, right? Exactly. He knows my secret, actually. That's why he's saying that. My hardest class in college was thermodynamics. And every time I would sit in that class, I would think about, God, why am I in this class? And even today, 50 years later, I sometimes get nightmares that I've actually failed that class and somebody's coming to take my degree away. So hopefully this does not happen to you in employment law or that other European class that you talked about, which was very long, actually. That's why I said AI can do that. So, but no, this is fascinating. So in terms of leveraging the AI tools itself, when you did use the AI tool the first time, generative AI, very first time, go back to maybe 2022, 2023, the first time you did it, what did it feel like? Curiosity? Okay. It is freakish. Magic. I'm glad you said that. And, often I joke about this, that, and that's the thing. It's not magic. It's actually math as we know it. And I'm happy to get into math with you offline if you like. It's really fascinating math. And really, it made neural nets cool all over again. Barbara, you talked about that. Because before, for a long time, neural nets was actually ignored in this country and literally kind of moved away. People had moved away from it, saying it's not used for anything, it's worthless. And all of a sudden, resurgence of neural networks, thanks to what has happened with generative AI. But we can think about that. But sometimes I joke with people that, if you think it's magic, if you think it's math, it's really math. But if you don't pay attention to it, if you don't pay attention to that field, whether you're an advocate or somebody who doesn't want to use it, you have to pay attention to it, because if you don't, and I'm saying this with utmost respect, people who don't pay attention to it may disappear faster than Houdini did. Okay, think about it, magic, Houdini, right? So I want you to think about that. So it's really interesting what's happening in this space, and I'm happy to just share a few ideas. The reason we made the tools available with the speed with which it did for our entire campus community, including, of course, Flint and Dearborn, is because I sincerely believe that this is the most impactful technology of this century and can be a force for positive disruption if used thoughtfully, if used responsibly, if used ethically, if used legally. And we heard that from our faculty panel and from Taz, that it is really, really important for us to be thinking about. And candidly, the vendors are not going to be able to show the world how to use this technology responsibly, ethically, legally. It is up to us. It's up to leaders and best, when we call ourselves leaders and best, so it's our responsibility to walk the talk. And if we're going to show people how to use this technology responsibly, then we have to be actually willing to try it out and explore it. I often ask large groups, and I ask this question of myself. I ask often colleagues, myself, what is your AIQ? What is our organization's AIQ? Just like we talk about EQ and IQ, might be a question to ask about AIQ. But I define AIQ very, very broadly. AIQ is not about using AI. It's not about rah-rah AI, let's all just use AI. It is also about knowing when actually not to use AI. And the panel talked about it. In several of you brought up that issue. It's okay. We did that with smartphones, if you remember. At dinner table in our house, my wife, myself, our son, whenever he's in town, we put our smartphones away. We want to eat as a family together. So we have set boundaries, so it's okay to know when not to use AI. It's also important for us to know the impact, the negative impact AI can have on our critical thinking skills. It's absolutely, you raised that point, very important. Just for all of you to know, we are also very concerned about that in terms of third and fourth graders. When there are formative thinking is happening, we are making those actual connections with our neurons in our brain. When that's happening, we need to make sure those critical thinking skills are preserved. So how do we do that? So just so you know, this summer, and Saul is here, so I'm going to have him raise his hand right back there. At my request, Saul is working with our College of Education this summer, where we're hosting a all-day workshop for all the superintendents of all the high schools in Michigan, where they're all going to be invited. They'll spend one day with us. Half a day we'll talk about AI. Half a day we'll talk about cybersecurity, and we will raise a lot of these issues with them. And we are partnering with the College of Education. I'm sure you'll see the invitations coming, and you should, by all means, you're welcome to attend. The other event I want to tell you, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but I'm very excited about this. In April, we're still debating the date, actually. I'll send you the details. We're also hosting an event on Ann Arbor campus titled, Everything That's Wrong About AI. Because I've had colleagues who, for example, just like Taz encountered, and as you're saying that story, I was just imagining that face. I've had colleagues where they talk about the fact that how they would like me to ban AI. And I said to this person, I'm glad you think I have that kind of power, but I actually don't. And I said, what does the ban actually look like? What does that actually mean? And when we started unpacking it, we started recognizing that there are challenges. We talked about a few minutes ago about bias in the AI systems. I want you to remind you, bias has existed in our society for a long, 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 long time. Do you remember in COVID, we were all asked to use pulse oximeters? You remember pulse oximeters to measure our oxygen concentration level? do you actually know that folks who have my skin color, or who are darker than my skin color, the oxygen concentration levels that pulse oximeter measures, it measures them incorrectly because for darker skin, we have more melatonin, it gets absorbed. The green light, the cheap green light that they use in these pulse oximeter actually the light is absorbed, so it does not reflect back, so it measures the oxygen concentration incorrectly. And do you know many people in neighborhoods of Detroit and other places were sent home thinking their oxygen concentration level was just fine and then died? And do you know that it was Michigan medicine researchers who identified, and they published a paper pointing out that, hey, these pulse oximeters were not designed appropriately. So if you ever wondered, if you're a dark skin color, and you ever wonder, you went to a certain hotel, you put your hands under the faucet, and the water doesn't come out, that's because they're using a cheap light. And it's not recognizing another person comes and the water seems to just flow fine. And so point I'm trying to make is I encourage people to be at least semi-kind to AI. Don't have to be kind, but don't have to hate it just because it does something. Because, humans make mistakes, biases in the society. AI does amplify that bias, so I'm not trying to undermine it, but we got to think about it. But, we already have preconceived notions, not here, this group, but generally speaking, I encounter people with preconceived notions who just decide this is how it's going to be, and that's why I'm not going to use it. So as researchers, as scholars, as educators, I would encourage all of us, myself included, to open our mind and try to learn a variety of aspects that are out there. There's so much information out there. So when I talk about AIQ, I'm talking about all of these aspects. And my desire, my goal is to see that we can provide all the tools and resources for everyone such that every student that graduates from all campuses of University of Michigan has the highest possible AIQ. So they can become policymakers, they can become leaders, they can become folks who understand the negative impact of AI on environment. When people ask me questions about electricity and power consumption and how we want to get to carbon neutrality, well, if you want to get to carbon neutrality, as an engineer, I can tell you, then nuclear has to be on the table as an option to provide power, because we are not getting to carbon neutrality using solar and wind. Our power consumption is too much. Somebody asked a question made a comment in Taz's Paul about, how much water does, drawing a picture consumes, and Taz had a great answer. I do want to remind you that if you take a shower for 1 minute, if you take a shower for just 1 minute, and most of us, I'm sure, take showers longer than 1 minute, at least I do, and so 1 minute of shower consumes 8 liters or 8,000 milliliters of water. One picture that you draw at the most consumes 500 milliliters of water, 500 milliliters at the most. It's a lot less than that with some of the efficient systems. So I just want to make the connection. So if you're really concerned about environment, in addition to AI, that's lots of things we can change. There are lots of things we can change. And candidly, I could talk about hours with you and debate out on this topic, and we'll do that in April when we talk about everything that's wrong about AI. So keep that in mind. I'm saying to people, bring it on. Let's have a conversation. Let's debate. Let's learn. Let's educate each other. Let's all be teachers to each other. That's what I'm thinking about. So think about that when we talk about what is your AIQ, what is our AIQ. So taking one step forward here, AI essentially has become a general purpose technology. And we have seen some general purpose technologies before. There was, of course, the printing press. You remember there were people who were absolutely opposed to printing press. We did not want printing press. Yet printing press democratized the books. We're able to read now because of printing press. There was steam engine. People talked about that too. And I could go on and on. There was electricity. And if you're curious, here's some data for you to think about. Look at this information. It took electricity 90 years to get to 1 billion users, 36 years for the internet, approximately, smartphones, about 16 years, and look what it did in terms of 3 years for people to get to. So the speed, somebody talked about the speed and agility of this tool. That's what is happening. That's the speed. And it's really, really difficult as faculty members just to keep up with all of this. And that's why these kind of sessions and conversations are extremely important. That's why kudos to Chancellor Carletta and Carrie and so on. Isn't she amazing? With, due respect to Domenico, Domenico is great, but I always tell Domenico, it's even better now. That's what I tease him all the time. I told him this morning, actually, I texted him, I'm going to my favorite campus, Domenico, you're not there anymore. That's what I told him. And I'll let him know that when I shared this, that you all laughed and clapped. That's what I'll tell him. So, but look at this data here. Isn't that amazing how fast this technology is spreading? And so that's why we have to pay attention to it. So taking one step further, essentially it has become a foundational technology in all businesses. We could draw pictures of every business in the world, and you'll see a picture like this, where generative AI is essentially what internet is to us. Imagine a conversation now, somebody says, let's ban internet. Believe it or not, when internet came on scene, people were having those conversations. You can't ban internet. Internet came with lots of problems. We still deal with them. I had to deal with them in August of 2023, along with generative AI launch. I had the misfortune of calling our board, telling them one day before the classes were starting, we were turning off the internet. That's not the easiest call to make to the board. Usually it's a CIO killer. In my case, I survived thanks to great leaders like Carrie and the rest of my team who supported us through some very difficult time. That was a very challenging time. But what I'm trying to say is, so AI is not going to be without problems. But remember, internet you just saw has been here for more than 60 years. We are only in third year of generative AI, something to think about and consider. And this is what I've heard when I talked about what has been your first experience like. So I don't know if it matched with how you used it, but if I talked about, what did you use it for? And Taz gave a great example of the cookie or 10-layer cake cookie, whatever it was. So I saw that and I said, oh, I don't want that. That's too sweet. And so for me, but kids, I understand. But these are some of the things I heard about from people, as I said. And perhaps yours is not on the list. Yours might be somewhere in the middle. But here's the other list I want you to pay attention to. When I asked about concerns, what concerns you most, these were some of the things that people talked about. Impact on critical thinking. We have to address it. Impact on our environment. We already talked about it. We absolutely should. Bias and hallucinations. We had a comment about that. One thing that didn't come up is there are people actually worried about AI becoming sentient and taking our world over. Maybe running humans. People are concerned about that. So the leaders, some of the vendors, Sam Altman included, have done a disservice to the community by talking about it. Because when you talk about artificial general intelligence, if you ask 10 people in the room, what is their definition of artificial general intelligence, 10 people will give you 10 different definitions. So give you one example. I don't know if you've been to San Francisco or Phoenix and some of these cities, and if you got a chance to ride Waymo. The self-driving car. It's a lot of fun, actually. I encourage you to try it out. Except a couple of months ago, one particular Waymo car did something really interesting. You may have heard this story. What it did was, it was approaching on a Friday night, a police roadblock was set up to catch drunk drivers. So the Waymo approached the police roadblock, and not really sure what Waymo was thinking, it decided to make an illegal U-turn on that street and started running the other way. The police, wondering what was going on, chased the car down. So it promptly stopped when police police lights came. It pulled over. The police went over to the car and then actually didn't know what to do. There was no one in the car. There's not even a passenger. Nobody was in there. So they're like standing around, like not knowing what to do. And then they kind of let the car go and informed the Waymo and the Waymo quickly said, oh, there was a bug. Now, the folks in California were really upset about this. They said somebody should have had to pay for this because if it was me, my rear end would have been in jail. That's what people talked about, got really angry about it. But point I'm trying to make is other people said, is Waymo developing a personality? Does it know it should run away from police? Did it thought that the police was maybe ICE? I don't know. I mean, considering what's going on in our world right now. But, people give examples like that and worry. But so that's a genuine concern. We should engage. We should talk about it. But I have to tell you this. In my lifetime, AI is not becoming sentient. And after I'm gone, if it does, and you find out I was wrong, you can send me an email and you'll not get a reply. So you've been sitting very quietly talking too much about AI. Let's do something non-AI. Is that okay? You guys want to play rock, paper, scissors? Yeah, why don't you play rock, paper, scissors, best of 5 wins? Go ahead, try it right now. And if you don't know rock, paper, scissors, you can ask AI about the rules, okay? It's right here. Rock, paper, scissors. Go ahead. All right. You had a lot of fun. All right, let's get going. All right, here we go. Now, notice that was a very fun non-AI break, right? I did see some of the folks, even some administrators were trying to figure out what the rules are, just so you know, okay? I know there are quite a few of them here. But what I wanted you to know is, as we were playing and having fun, and by the way, you're a fun group. I would love to come back here all the time. So as rest of us, as you're playing and having fun, I do want you to know that the rest of the world was actually working, potentially using AI tools. Here was what was happening in the world. That's what happened in that 1 minute while you're playing, okay? While you're playing that 1 minute, these were some of the things that were happening in the world in that 1 minute. And I have one more slide that tells you some additional things that were happening, many generated by, I'm sure, AI. And one more slide, here you go. These were all the things that were happening in that 1 minute while all of us were having kind of fun, a lot of data out there, and I left a bunch of things out as well. But a lot of activity in the world, a lot of driven by AI. Think about agility, think about this, speed with which things are happening, and that's what we're dealing with. And to your point, as we think about our students and going back to the outside world as to what we are preparing for them, that's the kind of world that we are preparing for them. We have to prepare them for some of it with AI, some of it not using AI, providing them the right AI cue is what we should be thinking about, okay? This timeline is, many of you will be familiar with, of the history of AI, going back to 50s, Alan Turing and his famous paper on machine learning that he wrote, computing he wrote a long time ago. A seminal moment that I remember was when in 1997, Gary Kasparov was defeated by IBM's Deep Blue, and I took notice of it. You might have been there that time probably at IBM, right? Based on the timeline you mentioned. And others can relate to it, but what's been happening is each time I make this presentation, notice it doesn't go far enough, it doesn't fit, so here is the second slide. And each time I make this presentation, I have to add more slides because the speed with which things are developing. Most recently, the US government issued that famous Genesis project and Genesis paper about potential funding opportunities for people of all, higher education institutions, industry, and so on. So there is a lot happening in this field. And every time I turn around, that's what I find out. You remember this is the question I'd asked you about what was your hardest class? The reason I asked that question was early last year, in February of 2025, Jensen Huang, NVIDIA CEO, the most, highest cap company in the world right now, $5 trillion plus, talked about how every person should have an AI tutor in their back pocket, so to speak. I want you to know that your University of Michigan, thanks to great work done by all of our teams, including your Dearborn team under lead of Carrie here, we were able to provide our faculty colleagues, should they choose to, they can deploy a 24/7 tutor for their class in less than 4 minutes. We have built integration between that and Canvas. So on Ann Arbor campus, if a faculty member wants to configure an AI tutor based on their own notes, own lecture notes, own information that's in the Canvas, they can do so in under 4 minutes. So when you say I'm busy, I'm sure every one of us can find 4 minutes. I just want you to know, not that you have to use AI tutor. You don't have to if you don't want to, but it's certainly available for people to do that. Carrie wanted me to also talk about, what's coming next. So we have some big announcements coming in next week or two. So I'm going to skip some slides and go to that real quick. I wanted you to know, and Taz talked about how, for example, she was part of the first task force that we had appointed in 2023. There's a second task force that's working right now. There's a representative from, thanks to Gabriella, there's a great representative from Dearborn on that committee as well. This committee is looking at primarily focused on teaching and learning and thinking about pedagogical challenges that Taz brought up, thinking about the plagiarism and integrity issues that were brought up, and on and on. But as we talk about integrity, I do want to remind all of us, myself included, that when you talk about plagiarism, that plagiarism challenge is even bigger than our students. It's everywhere, right? So we have to have a higher level conversation around integrity, in my view. In College of Engineering and on Ann Arbor campus, for example, you may already know this, when we give exams there, and this rule has been in place for more than 50 years, I'm told, maybe before my time, we are not allowed to be in the class as faculty members. We simply hand exams and we leave. we leave. Students sign an honor code, and then they are expected to, honor it. And they time themselves, they supervise themselves, a much different level of engagement and conversations. So I have met many Ann Arbor students, and I want you to know that I've been so incredibly impressed with Ann Arbor students. So I actually debate faculty colleagues when they talk about how students may be cheating, plagiarizing. We need to have a conversation. But my experience with Dearborn students has been very different. I will tell you a story of a young woman who I met in one of your classes where I had asked them the questions, how do you use generative AI? So this young woman, and I could relate, she talked about the fact that how she is a non-native speaker of English, and in this particular class, how she was using Gen AI after she wrote her paper. She fed the professor's grading rubric to the Gen AI tool and had the Gen AI tool evaluate her paper and keep giving her feedback so she could continue improve her writing. And when she submitted her paper, she not only submitted the first version of paper, her second, third, fourth, all different versions that she went through, and her entire discussions with Gen AI, she submitted all of that. Every company in the world would want to hire that young woman, I'm telling you right now. That kind of creativity and that kind of authenticity is what we need among all our students. So you should be incredibly proud of your students here, because I certainly was blown away, and I went back thinking, man, I want to come back to this campus again and again. It's because of your outstanding students. So just wanted to share that as a data point. But this committee is looking at, and their report is due April, and we'll release it publicly again, just like we did the first report. So that's should be coming out in April of this year. Watching the time here. So this was our Michigan environment as of now. As you think about it, we have UM-GPT, we of course have Go Blue, we have Maisie, and so on, all these different tools. But what we're planning to do next is, the announcement that's coming is, in November of 2024, Anthropic introduced a new protocol called Model Context Protocol, MCP, Model Context Protocol. And the protocol was so powerful, it was designed to have the ability to connect easily to different data sources. And every vendor recognized its power, so they all adopted it. So that protocol is being now used by OpenAI, it's used by Mistral. Everyone is using Model Context Protocol. So just like we were ahead a few years ago, we are thinking ahead now. So what we'll be doing is releasing infrastructure from Maisie, called Maisie 2, which will be built around Model Context Protocol. So what would that do for all of us? I want to show you that picture. What it will essentially do is, it will turn each one of us, so if you wanted to, you could start building your own agents. Everybody, you will not need coding to build your agents. Each one of you can build your own agent to be able to connect to a variety of data sources. So you could build an agent that, for example, will connect to PubMed database. They have their own MCP server. It can connect to that MCP server and bring down that PubMed research into your agent that you can start probing based on your research field that you may be in. You could design an agent for your students to have resources from PubMed, from IEEE, and from a variety of different places where all that information comes, that information you're able to probe as part of teaching your class. In fact, what we are doing is we're taking it one step further. If you have built an agent, why should we build one in Ann Arbor, for example? What if we can repurpose it, right? For the same application. So what we are going to do is actually release the concept and framework for an internal MCP app store, a Michigan internal MCP app store, just like Apple App Store that you talked about. So no company in the world is even talking about it right now. So your University of Michigan is ahead of it. So we are going to release an MCP, essentially MCP store, where all of us could start building apps and then put them in the store to be used by other colleagues across University of Michigan. This is going to be groundbreaking, this is going to be exciting, and this is going to be your University of Michigan, Dearborn, Flint, Ann Arbor, coming together and building something that our entire community can use. And if you wanted to later, maybe we'll let Ohio State people use it. No, we'll let actually everyone use it, actually. That's the goal. I know, I was looking at there. I usually say that and look at Lori. I don't know if you know our Provost Lori McCauley. She has all her degrees from Ann Arbor campus from Ohio State, so I tease her about that all the time. So, but yeah, so that's the vision actually. Building this MCP store. It's going to be groundbreaking. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be dramatic. And I think the date I don't remember. I think Saul. Few other people on my team are working with students. On Michigan campus, we were planning to hold a hackathon with students where we are going to teach MCP to them and have them build apps over a day and a half just to have fun with them and learn from them, actually. Learn from each other and learn from them. So those are the kinds of things that are going on right now. And I'm right at time, so I want to be respectful of your time. But it's really, really exciting. And like I said, it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with brilliant people I get to work with and hang out. And through osmosis, sometimes I look smart, okay? But it's such a privilege to be with all of you. I appreciate you indulging me and giving me this time. Thank you to both of you. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
This has certainly been remarkable. Thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you took something interesting or stimulating or disturbing or exciting or all of these things away. Please stay in touch with the hub, stay in touch in your departments, let us know how we can help, and enjoy your weekend.